the day after the last day. But have we actually read in any class, morning, evening, or whatever, what is in the appendix of this book? The narration of the Damodar Leela from Jiva Goswami, Gopal Champu?
Maharaj read it first when he was on the road to who was listening to his classes. I don't know if he read it here.
Oh, no, I'm talking about here.
I don't think so.
Right, so would you like to hear that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's very special. So I'm going to use a lit screen to read this. It'll be easier for me. Wow. That cheated me. My stopwatch. Did you hear what happened? I had a stopwatch function, and midday, I thought, let me actually time how long it's going to take me to shave up and do all this stuff. So I put the stopwatch on, but I didn't realize that I had the stopwatch function on the screen. It wasn't the actual time function. So, but the stopwatch function was showing 5:30, 5:45, 5:50, and I was thinking, I'm on time, this is unusual. And then I come here and I look at that clock and I thought, wait a minute, this is like that story of the magician. Remember that story? In Calcutta? Famous magician who was supposed to come at 5 p.m. or 5:30 p.m. or something, and the whole audience was an uproar. They were waiting more than an hour. And when he came in, he just strolled down through the central aisle and went up on the stage as if nothing happened, and everybody's like looking at him and snarling, and then he sees the whole audience, and then he says, oh, you are all so upset. What is the reason? You told that you were going to come at 5 o'clock, and now it's 6 o'clock, and you're not even saying anything to us. He says, oh, 6 o'clock? Please, everyone, can you please check your watches? And sure enough, it was 5 o'clock. Yeah.
Is that what you were doing just now?
So let me make sure that my stopwatch is off now. Yes. Right. There it is. And I'm back to Earth time with our wonderful eclipse tonight. But we have a different way of looking at eclipses, because Krishna is the moon, Krishna Chandra, right? And Krishna is the controller of the moon, the sun. He says that in Bhagavad Gita. He says, I am the light of the sun and the moon, and all of the planets. And so, devotees of Krishna don't really have anything to fear from eclipses, Rahu, Ketu, and so forth, right? You're an astrologer, and you're also a devotee astrologer.
The eclipsed moon tonight
is
in Rohini.
Yeah, you also mentioned that.
That's auspicious thing.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
And actually, for those who have an exalted moon, like Maharaj has his moon not only in Rohini, Taurus, like it's going to be tonight, but it's the same in his subchart as Navamsha, which is called Vargotama. It makes it twice as strong.
Meaning what?
Well, for you, it means you have to be especially careful.
Especially careful? Oh, why?
With the time, you have to watch the time carefully.
Oh. Okay. Gurave Gaura Chandraya Radhikaya Tadalaya Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaha. Jai Śrī Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Śrī Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Śrī Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Śrī Radha Vinod Bihari Radha Govinda Jiyo Ki Jai. Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Srila Gurudev Ki Jai, Sri Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath Echai Gosai Kori Charana Vandan Jaha Hoite Vignanash Avishta Puran Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadama Hyam Dadati Swapadantikam Janulambita Bujo Kanakavadato Samkirtanaika Pitaro Kamalaya Taksho Vishwambaro Jijavaro Jugadharma Palo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunavataro Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaurati Nama He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Dr. Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vrindai Tulsi Debai Priyaye Keshavasya Cha Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavachai Namo Namaha Śrī Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Śrī Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. My Dandavat pranams at the lotus feet of my most beloved worshipable Gurudev Nitya-lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Asto Tarasata Shri Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada. And my same Dandavat pranams to the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Siksha Gurudevs Nitya-lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Astatarasata Shri Srila Bhakti Rakshak Shri Dhara Goswami Maharaj and Nitya-lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Ashtatarasata Shri Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And my Dandavat pranams to all my Shri Rupa Anuga Guru Varga, my Dandavat pranams to all the Vaishnavas and the Vaishnavis. So, the appendix of this Dāmodara-ashtakam book has an excerpt from, actually it's from Srila Gurudev's book titled Sri Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami, His Life and Teachings. It's an excerpt from there. But that excerpt from there is describing how he was reading this account of Sri Damodar Leela from Gopal Champu, from Jiva Goswami's Gopal Champu, in Keshav Ji Gaudiya Mat. And when he was reading this description, he became very overwhelmed, Gurudev. And he went to his Guru Maharaj, who was there at the time. And he began to tell him, oh, Guru Maharaj, I'm reading this. What amazing presentation of Jiva Goswami, who is like the topmost great scholar and philosopher, but yet he's also the greatest poet, and so rasik. He began to read that to Param Gurudev. And in the course of hearing that, Param Gurudev became completely overwhelmed, and Gurudev says he manifested ecstatic symptoms and weeping that he's only seen once or twice in his life, Gurudev told. So Gurudev is saying, once during the month of Kartik, Srila Gurupada Padma had brought his noble presence to Sri Keshavji Gaudiya Mutt. One day he was sitting in his bhajan kutir, chanting Hari Nam, absorbed in transcendental emotions. I had sat down nearby, and I was silently reading the chapter on Sri Dhamma Bandhana Leela from Sri Gopal Champu. As I read, I became completely fascinated with Srila Jiva Goswami's beautiful description of this pastime. Finally, unable to restrain myself, I ran over to Srila Gurudev and said, Srila Jiva Goswami was a Mahapurush, a most exalted personality and an unrivaled philosopher. At the same time, he was a transcendental, rasik poet whose work is eloquent, touching, and descriptive. Although such a combination of vast erudition and poetic artistry is rarely found in this world, when we read his narration of Sri Dhamma Bandhana Leela, we see the two unified in an astonishing manner. I began to read that description aloud. As I neared the end of the story, my Srila Gurudev suddenly began weeping. An incessant flow of tears cascaded down his cheeks, and other symptoms of spiritual ecstasy were clearly visible in his form. I've only seen such an expression of extraordinary spiritual emotions once or twice in my life. So, this is now the excerpt. Dhamma Bandhana Nibandhanam. This means the determination to bind Śrī Kṛṣṇa with rope. And Yamal Arjuna Mochanam, the deliverance of the twin Arjuna trees. From chapter 8 of Sri Gopal Champu, Purva section, by Srila Jiva Goswami Pad. Editor's note from Gopal Champu. Every morning, before Śrī Kṛṣṇa takes the cows out to graze, an assembly of Brajvasis gather together at Sri Nanda Baba's palace for the pleasure of Sri Nanda Baba and his four brothers, as well as for Śrī Kṛṣṇa, Śrī Balaram, and the other Vrajvasis. Snigdhakanta and Madhukanta narrate Krishna's pastimes. What these twin brothers narrated one day is about to be described. The next morning, in that assembly, when all the Gopas, who are part of the Vaishya community, had gracefully taken their seats, Sri Snigdhakanta began, quote, he said, the month of Kartik was nearing conclusion. Early one morning, Sri Yashoda gladly beheld her sleeping little Gopal, whose eyes, now closed, resembled two blue lotus flowers. Mother Yashoda contentedly gazed upon her child and began to gently and lovingly stroke him with her hands, which are as soft as fresh budding leaves. When she noted with relief that he was again in deep sleep, she slowly and silently left his bedside. She entered the courtyard on her own, tied her cloth tightly around her, and started churning some yogurt to use in her home. So this is the scene, the beautiful scene. Today, on the affectionate and the insistent invitation of Sri Nanda Maharaj's elder brother, Sri Upananda, Sri Rohini Devi, accompanied by her son Baladev, mounted a magnificent chariot and went to his home. The maidservants were also coming and going while performing their different services. There was quite a lot to do because the month of Marg Shirsha, which is the topmost month of the year, was approaching, and the annual festival of Indra Puja, which is observed by the people in general, and which has long been celebrated in traditional culture, was at hand. When all the maidservants were thus engaged in their respective tasks, the Queen of Braja, Sri Yashoda, personally set to churning the yogurt with great care. To encourage her son's pleasant slumber, she sang sweetly as she churned, absorbed in the thoughts of Śrī Kṛṣṇa with her mind and her soul fully offered to him. She sang detailed descriptions of his childhood pastimes as her eyes admired his lovely face. So we know that our Gurudev always encouraged all of us to sing Govinda Dāmodara-vrata, Govinda Dāmodara-vrata, Govinda Dāmodara-vrata, Govinda Dāmodara-vrata. Srila Shukadev Goswami has mentioned this in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 9, Verse 2. Quote, here's the quote. One day, when all the maidservants were engaged in various tasks, Sri Yashoda, the wife of Sri Nanda, personally began to churn yogurt. At that time, songs about Sri Krishna's childhood pastimes came to her mind, and she began to sing them. As dark-complexioned Vrajeshwari Sri Yashoda churned, her arms repeatedly moved back and forth. A series of girdles embedded with jewels encircled her waist cloth, and beautiful bangles adorned her arms. Her ornaments sounded in time with the vigorous movement of her waist and arms. Meanwhile, her son drowsily opened his eyes a little. As Sri Vrajeshwari beheld the charm of his lotus face, she churned with greater intensity and sang. And here's the song composed by Jiva Goswami. Gokula pati kula tilakam tvamasta, krita sukrita vraja rajita sukha vraja, Nayananandi Samiha. I don't know the meter of this, but at least we're hearing the words. Oh, my darling son, you are the crest ornament of the dynasty of Gokulapati, Sri Nanda Maharaj. The Vrajavasis must have performed greatly pious acts to witness you bringing joy to their hearts. Your activities delight the eyes of all. That's verse 1. Next verse, there's about 8, looks like 8 verses. 7. Anandod Bhavajanma Mahotsava Nandita Gopa Samaja Putanika Mriti Nava Mangala Kriti Valayita Gokula Raja. It's something like Gita Govinda meter. You rouse the joy of the cowherd community by the blissful festival of your birth, and by the recent and the auspicious act of killing Putana, You have spread the glory of your father, the king of Gokul, far and wide. Dalya nivartana shakata vivartanam anubhavyena parita satrinavartaka vayu nivartaka parameshenanita. After eliminating Shakatasura, who made everyone lose all composure, you were blessed by the auspicious rituals of the Brahmanas. Later, Sri Nanda's worshipful deity, Parameshwar, returned you to us after destroying Trinavarta along with his storm. So she's meditating that who saved this little baby Krishna, who she's singing about? Oh, Parameshwara, the worshipable deity of Nanda Maharaj, returned you to us. Madhura prangana virachita ringana jalaja nayana supunya nana kelishu nritya kalalishu darshita vara naipunya. O lotus-eyed boy of incomparable piety, you used to crawl about on your tiny hands and knees and in our charming courtyard. You have shown great expertise in playing various games and demonstrating many varieties of dance. Taranaka baladi shobhalita tanvadi valaita manjula shobha jarati nivahe kautuka kalahe prabalita mitya lobha. When you used to grab the tails of the calves, they would run away, dragging you along. At those times, your gorgeous form was pulled through the dust and the cow dung, which gave you an even more enchanting splendor. While playfully quarreling with the elderly gopis, you would frivolously increase everyone's confusion through your antics. Mam mataram anusukam udvitanu pratatam satatam Krishna drutam urari kuru tanu vridhim puru ke lavali kritatrishna. O Krishna, since I am your mother, forever continue to expand my already boundless joy. Quickly grow healthy and strong, and fulfill our desire by delighting our eyes with your many lively pastimes. This is how Mother Yashoda is singing about Krishna. Tribhuvana darshana, this is the last verse of this song. Tribhuvana darshana vismaya marshana nishchita vaishnava maya hari varivasya sukadatamasya vigata jara marakaya. At first, you caused bewilderment by displaying the three worlds within your mouth. Later, however, it was understood. Jai Shri Shri Radha Govinda. Later, however, it was understood that by doing so, you confirmed the existence of Lord Vishnu's spiritual illusory potency. This is the way Mother Yashoda looked at it. Oh, at first you caused bewilderment by displaying the three worlds within your mouth. But later, however, it was understood that by doing so, you confirmed the existence of Lord Vishnu's spiritual illusory potency. Vaishnavi Maya, yes. O Krishna, may your body be free from aging and death, and may you become the bestower of bliss by serving Sri Hari. Then, after she sang this song, Śrī Kṛṣṇa, the ocean of eternal charm, woke up and climbed down from the bed crying. As he stretched his body, he took long breaths and he rubbed his sleepy eyes. Now, fully awake, he cried, "Ma, Ma!" Hearing the sound of the churning rod, Sri Gopal tottered over to his mother. Śrī Kṛṣṇa, the best of the blessed and the king of beauty, stopped the rod from churning. Sri Yashoda's motherly affection for Śrī Kṛṣṇa expanded within her heart, completely filling it with the desire to cradle him. And in her mood, there was a trace of fear and grief. As her motherly affection surged, she fed her young child the milk that spontaneously poured from her breasts in a stream. Mother Yashoda is gracious and splendorous like the rainy season. Her breasts began to shower streams of milk that resembled a continuous downpour, and Śrī Kṛṣṇa, like a Chataka bird, fittingly and gleefully began to drink that downpour. With great eagerness, Śrī Kṛṣṇa drank the milk of that blessed breast. He had only half satisfied his hunger when Mother Yashoda noticed that the milk in the next room was boiling over. Although her child was eager for her breast milk, she immediately put him down, although it was apparently unwise of her to do so, and she hastened inside to save the milk. She did not carry him as she ran, fearing that he might fall. Madhukanta interrupted. Two brothers. Snigdhakanta, what are you saying, my brother? That is illogical. How could it be that Śrī Yashoda left the starving baby to go elsewhere? She is the faultless ideal among all loving mothers within this universe. Then Snigdhakanta laughed and said, my dear elder brother, just wait and listen to me attentively. In reality, her leaving her child to save the milk is also a lovely pastime of motherly affection. Madhukanta was skeptical. How? He asked. Snigdhakanta replied, in the absence of Śrī Kṛṣṇa, the residents of Braja see that their bodies, homes, and other possessions are more or less waning. From the day he was born, his parents, Sri Nanda and Sri Yashoda, considered that all those residents of Braja, as well as all the items used to serve Śrī Kṛṣṇa, have abundant mamata for him. What has abundant mamata for him?
Everything in Vrindavan that serves Krishna.
Every item, every pot. Right. So even Sri Brahma, he confirms this in his prayers in the Srimad Bhagavatam when he glorifies Krishna after he tried to steal his calves and cows. Lord Brahma says, O Śrī Kṛṣṇa, the residents of Braja have completely offered their homes, their wealth, their relatives, their beloveds, their soul, their bodies, their children, their lives, and their minds, everything at your lotus feet. How, in all fairness, could you not award them a result superior to what you awarded Putana and the other demons? What can be said of the love that Śrī Kṛṣṇa's own mother and father have for him, when Sri Brahma himself has glorified the love of the other Brajvasis? All of the Brajvasis' rich milk and yogurt, as well as their bodies, homes, and other possessions, are exclusively meant for the service of Śrī Kṛṣṇa. Thus, while serving Śrī Kṛṣṇa, it is befitting to have more mamata or attachment for the objects used to serve Śrī Kṛṣṇa than for Śrī Kṛṣṇa himself. Did you get that? This is the answer by Snigdhakanta. So he continues, thus it is specifically understood that Mother Yashoda's intention in leaving Krishna to save the milk was most exalted. This has been sanctioned in the scriptures that advocate bhakti. The import is that it is appropriate for Mother Yashoda to have more attachment for the objects that are dear to Śrī Kṛṣṇa than for Śrī Kṛṣṇa himself. Indeed, this is the eternal nature of an affectionate mother. Having concluded this, it is only fitting that Śrī Yashoda first attend to those objects used in the service of Śrī Kṛṣṇa. At such times, she tolerates many personal inconveniences and remains unaware of her various household duties. With the loving mood born of her sthayi-bhav, her permanent emotion, that this is my son she is always aware of Śrī Krishna's needs more than her own bodily or household needs. She is always conscious of his complete dependence on her, and her perpetual attitude is, Śrī Krishna's necessities are my necessities, and fulfilling them is my sole obligation. Only the residents of Braja know what is involved in expressing this type of affection. Even when they chastise Śrī Krishna and punish him, he knows that they are just taking care of him. This is because a parent's chastisement is considered part of loving and raising their children. There is no limit to what I can say about the boundless expression of their parental affection. And if the residents of Braja feel angry with Krishna out of their affection for him, being the object of their extreme mamata, he is even prepared to undergo bondage. Just see! Even fire in the form of lightning sometimes appears in dense rain clouds. The evidence for the above statement is that both Mother Yashoda and her son benefit each other by their mutual love. Listen as I describe their affectionate dealings. When Mother Yashoda went to take the milk off the stove for the pleasure of her son, she first comforted him, saying, "My darling son, may all your problems and difficulties come to me. Watch this pot of yogurt for just a minute while I check on the boiling milk. I will return quickly." Ah, just as swiftly as she put her son aside and left that churning place, she returned. But even in that time, milk poured from her breasts out of deep motherly affection, wetting her blouse. It poured so much that it made the floor slippery. Still, Śrī Krishna's wishes had been checked, and he was most perturbed. In anger, he bit his trembling reddish lips, and he burst into tears. Then, picking up a small grinding stone which was lying nearby, he broke the pot of half-churned yogurt. However, he did not even get the slightest bit of butter from it. Poets have described his beauty at that time. Little Krishna's white teeth, a series of moons, were enveloped by the reddish hue reflecting from his lips. His two eyes, resembling restless partridges, were full of tears, and his lotus hands shone as they vigorously sloshed yogurt here and there. In this way, when the half-churned yogurt from the pot covered the entire floor, another type of festival manifested. Just then, his eyes caught sight of a pot of fresh butter hanging from the ceiling in the adjoining room. He ran to the door, slid the latch aside, and pushed it open. Then, moving the door stopper back into place, he slipped into the room and closed the door behind him. He used a nearby cot as a step. He lowered the pot of butter and started to eat it. Thereafter, he took the remaining butter and he secretly sneaked out through the window of that room. Meanwhile, Mother Yashoda had stopped the milk from boiling over into the fire. The milk cooled down to a simmer within seconds, and she took it off the stove. She dashed back to where she had left her son, only to find that he was gone. However, seeing evidence of her son's activity, she laughed in mixed anger and amusement. At first, out of suspicion, she became perturbed. But then Yogamaya manifested an aerial voice, which gave her knowledge, and it made her laugh. That aerial voice said, "Feeling hungry and thirsty, your little bumblebee made a hole in the bud of a lotus flower that had no pollen. when he saw that it was merely water that began dripping from that flower, he became disappointed, and he went to another lotus flower where he has found a big supply of honey. The import is that in order to get fresh butter, your son performed all these deeds. He first broke the churning pot, but he did not find butter there. He then found it hanging in the next room. You have displayed your intelligence by deciding to leave your baby and go cool down the milk. But if you can calm the anger of your child, you will receive even more praise. That's the aerial voice.
Wow.
Upon hearing the aerial voice, Mother Yashoda laughed and followed the thief's conspicuous yogurt footprints to the next room. The thief's conspicuous yogurt footprints. She managed to force the doors open. Then she stepped inside, only to behold her son's other matchless mischief. Tracing his path of escape, she finally spotted him, his eyes restless with fear. He was thinking, I have just stolen fresh butter. If my mother sees me here, how will I face her? His eyes moved about so frantically that they seemed to be on the verge of leaping into his ears. In other words, his eyes and his ears were watching out for his mother. Mother Yashoda saw him sitting restless-eyed atop the grinding mortar that he had overturned with all of his strength, feeding butter to the monkeys. And astonished by this, she smiled softly. She quietly crept up behind her guilty son. It is said that a wealthy person only has 2 eyes, but a thief has 100. That is to say, a wealthy person only has 2 eyes to look after his treasures, but a thief has 100 to spot that person's wealth and steal it. Although a person may be extremely careful to protect his wealth, it is not inaccessible to a thief. By nature, monkeys are proud of exhibiting their strength, but today their bellies were fully satisfied. So, when they saw Mother Yashoda advancing, holding a stick covered with cloth, they immediately scampered up the nearby trees. This alerted Krishna to what was happening, and he also fled. Seeing her son fleeing, Mother Yashoda broke into a run, and she began to chase him. A shower of flowers fell from her braid. "O King of Thieves," she loudly called, "where are you going? Stop! Stop, stop!" And hearing this, Śrī Kṛṣṇa uttered a faint cry, and a smile appeared on his face, enhancing his beauty. Mother Yashoda ran quickly after him. Although she came close, she could not catch him. It was as if 2 clouds, one big and one small, were being chased by the wind from west to east across the sky, the larger cloud unable to catch up with the smaller one. Similarly, this mother could not catch her son. Little Krishna was confident that his mother would never pursue him beyond the main gate, for she would then be seen running in public. Therefore, he intentionally ran in that direction. So Mother Yashoda knew that at that time of the day, no one would be outside the gate, so she just kept chasing him. This is early in the morning. As long as Krishna ran without looking back, his mother was unable to catch him. But as soon as he turned his head back in fear, she caught him by his hand. He frantically moved his eyes about as if trying to continue running away. He began crying in an attempt to reduce Mother Yashoda's anger, and out of impudence, he started trembling artificially. But he did not give up his childish pranks. Whenever she forcefully held his face so that she could look him in the eye, Śrī Kṛṣṇa turned his face in such a way as to wipe the oily gloss of butter from his mouth and make it look dry. Threatening him, Mother Yashoda said, "O Krishna, you have given me so much trouble. Before you steal from your home, first look at this stick in my hand." When she saw her lotus-eyed son's terror upon hearing these words, Sri Brajeshwari tossed that stick aside. "Don't beat me, mother," Krishna beseeched her. The queen of Braja scorned him. "But you are a thief, a thief!" Then, laughing to herself, she suddenly and forcefully instigated a quarrel with him. Ah, you are the king of thieves. You are Chora, the king of thieves. Krishna protested. No, mother. Chora took birth in your dynasty, not mine. There's a footnote, but you know what that is. You've heard this one before, right? Because there was actually a person named Chora Gopa in Mother Yashoda's family. So Krishna is saying, I'm not. It's your dynasty that the thief is there. Why would we have a Chora, a thief, in our home? In this way, Mother Yashoda and her butter-stealing son argued with each other. Oh, really? Well, who broke the pot of yogurt? She again inquired. Krishna replied, the Supreme Lord. He was punishing you. But, she continued, who fed butter to the monkeys? He who created them. No, she exclaimed. I suspect that you always feast with great relish on the fresh butter we prepare for use in the religious sacrifices. Mother Yashoda scolded her son as she would a thief, but finally her heart softened. She laughed with anger and she said, just admit your theft. Give up your arrogance. Thus pressed by his mother, Śrī Kṛṣṇa burst into tears. Look, Ma, he sobbed. When you anxiously rushed to save the milk, your ankle bell struck the pot of yogurt, and it broke. How is this my fault? And the monkeys, he continued, were inspired by the Supreme Lord to sneak into the house to steal. And when they began taking the butter, I caught them. What did I do wrong? And then, he retorted, the stick in your hand frightened me, so even though I am completely innocent, I fled like a thief. You saw I was so afraid, but still you mercilessly chased me, all for no reason. Mother Yashoda spoke as if lamenting. Oh, you who are the king of those skilled in argument, she said. You are the best of thieves. Although you are the son of Sri Braj, the most noble of men, your nature has become like a monkey's because you are fond of them. When fearful Śrī Kṛṣṇa heard this, he pointed to the forest and he said, if I am a monkey, then I will live in the forest, which slightly frightened his mother. Who knows, she thought, this arrogant boy could easily put his threat into action. To keep him from running into the forest, I must tie him up. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for me to single-handedly manage my household duties and this child. So turning to Krishna, she openly said, you thief, you restless boy, you who bewilder one and all by the charm of your flickering eyes. Why don't you simply accept my prohibitions? Look, I will tie you up and then quickly return to the house. If you have any strength left, you can show it to me by trying to steal something else. As she started to bind him, his eyes became moist. And in fury, he began to loudly cry out, Oh, Mother Rohini, he shrieked, where have you gone with my big brother? Because you are not here today, this mother is tying me up. Quickly, come, come. And since Rohini was far away, she could not hear his cries. But the ladies from the neighboring homes who had previously complained about Krishna and who had chastised him, they did hear his cries. And they informed each other of the fun, and then they assembled there. And as if taunting her, they reminded Śrī Yashoda of their complaints. Has this thief done something mischievous in your home also? They laughed. Mother Yashoda, however, was bent on teaching her son a lesson, so she paid no heed to their remarks. Snatching up a silk ribbon that had fallen from her braid, she immediately began binding her son's waist to a grinding mortar lying in the courtyard, with the same persistence that it takes to bind the neck of a calf. But that silk ribbon was 2 fingers? She took another ribbon from her hair and joined it to the first one, but still the same problem confronted her. Amazed, She then tried to bind Krishna's waist with several churning ropes that the gopis handed her. But still, Brajeshwari could not make up that gap of. From a distance, a cloud that is actually touching the peak of a mountain, it may be mistakenly perceived as being quite far beyond it. And in a similar sense, although the full length of rope was actually touching Śrī Kṛṣṇa, it could not bind his apparently tiny waist. The rope was always too short. Observing this, the ladies of Braja laughed, and they remarked, "Oh, Brajeshwari, we already told you that this boy surely has some extraordinary illusory potency. On account of it, he even surpasses Kafallak, the foremost among thieves. He seems to be satisfied simply by eating stolen goods, or by such acts he delights, both the donors of those goods and the enjoyers of them. He is gradually gaining quite a reputation as one who steals others' possessions." Then Mother Yashoda responded to the ladies, "What does this recently born child know about being a thief? He does not know good from bad, but it seems that you are the ones who know some evil trickery. Although you actually favor him, externally you behave in a contrary way." At this the ladies laughed. "O respected Sri Yashoda," they said, "we take an oath at your feet that we have nothing to do with these astonishing powers." Finally, Sri Yashoda reasoned, "As Sri Gargacharya said, surely some potency of Sri Bhagavan surrounds my son. This infant boy cannot know what he is doing." So just to put an end to this bewilderment, Sri Yashoda repeatedly called for more and more churning ropes from the homes of those gopis. Despite her persistence in her endeavor to bind her son, she could not find any way to accomplish the seemingly impossible task. Instead, Sri Yashoda, the queen of Braja, dripped with perspiration, and curls of hair fell over her face again and again, and finally she became completely exhausted. So we will have to continue this narration tomorrow, because there's lots more nectar dripping from this iPad. Yes, it's another evening of wonderful narration. But isn't this quite unique? I mean, did you ever hear any description like that with all these incredible details? And you could definitely put on an incredible drama with this is the, what do you call it, the script, right?
Yeah, with Katha is the narrator.
Yeah, exactly. I'm surprised that no one ever did this at the festivals.
We did this drama, but not
I mean,
like this.
Yeah, maybe this book wasn't fully printed and available at that time, but they had the actual thing. Okay, Shri Jai Shri Yashoda Maya Ki Jai, Jai Shri Krishna Kanaya Ki Jai, Jai Shri Damodar Leela Ki Jai, Damodar Bandhan Leela Ki Jai, Shri Braj Basigan Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande. Vancha Kalpadubhascha Kripa Sindhubi Vachapatitaram Pavane Vaishnavi Vinamo. Jai Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Shri Shri Radha Govinda Jiyo Ki Jai, Shri Gaur Arti Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Jugal Arti Ki Jai.